Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Now, this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
I say that my favorite leader that's alive right now would be Toto Wolff, the chief or general manager of the Mercedes Formula One team. That guy is just super impressive. Yeah, just incredible what he's been able to do. And then there's so many that have passed on, and I don't even know if they were even like really great leaders, some of them, but just people that you try to just emulate. As far as like a communication person, I was always amazed by how prodigious Ben Franklin was. That's probably, if I had to look at a dead leader, somebody that I would try to emulate.
Obviously, you haven't met Ben Franklin. Also, have you met the Mercedes Formula One guy?
No, I have not. No,
So,
that guy is incredible.
If you were to meet one of them and be on a park bench somewhere having a coffee with them, what would be one question you would ask them?
I think what motivates them. Just based on how much they're trying to achieve. And then I think the other is, what is their relationship with control? Because I've noticed the most successful people, there's this ability to let go of control and just really trust the team around them to get these things done. And to me, that is just, it's amazing. Not that I'm a control freak or anything, but our anxieties go up the further we are from an outcome if we genuinely care. So that's something that I believe they're a bit stronger at that, or quite stronger at that than I am.
So in other words, they've got control of themselves to be able to handle control.
Yeah. So the further you are from the end delivery of something, you're trusting all these systems and processes and people to not be complacent and get that done at equal the standard that you set or higher. And between my companies, there's roughly like 60 people. So it's not that much. And some of these others, just the racing team, I believe there's a few hundred people, which is amazing, winning. I think it's like 8 championships now, which I find remarkable. Or even take a company like Apple. I would have probably said Steve Jobs is my hero until I read the biography on him. And I was like, wow, I don't want to be anything like that guy. But yeah, that to me is just remarkable how you just build this thing with a really solid foundation. Granted, some of my words, but they continually go up and you're just so far away from what's actually being built and delivered.
Yeah. And I think the big thing here that I'm hearing what you say, it's around processes, systems, things like that, because any high performing team, high performing organization, high performing individual, whether they're an athlete or corporate world, entrepreneur, always comes down. There's this one trait that I keep saying, there's a few traits. One is of course attitude and so forth. But one trait that I see outside of resilience or grit, it comes down to processes and systems they have in place, because they can do rinse and repeat, but they know what works. They know what's really good, but they're more efficient than other people. And I see that trait everywhere coming through from around processes and systems. Is that something that even a leader who runs a small team or a leader that runs a larger team, because a lot of them are going, well, I'm a leader, I'm not an entrepreneur, I don't own the business and all things like that. Do you think that they should actually still have processes and systems for them around their leadership and the way that they run teams and things like that?
For sure. And there's always a process, whether there's a process or not, there's a process taking place. So it behooves you to define that process and optimize it to the best of your abilities, especially if you want to be better. And if you're not waking up to be better than you were the day before, I don't know what to tell you, right? You're probably not listening to this podcast. So I think that is inherently important for everybody. And I think some cultures embrace that more than others. And I would say that those are just more successful individuals. Even take parenting, right? It's parents that are teaching your kid, all right, clean your room, make your bed, do those things. So these little processes, these little habits that are going to serve you better in life. So yeah, I agree. Leaders should be looking at whether it's them calendaring, which I think is a leadership skill, when somebody's not making sure that they block off their time effectively or giving someone their undivided attention, or even the way that they go about their work. I think those are inherent things that every leader should do for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now, the show's called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title of the show or that statement, what does that mean for you?
In the most simple terms, that leadership is changing.
Yep.
I could try to change the words around, but yeah. And I think it's just maybe the evolution, right? It's the evolution of leadership. Yeah. I don't know how much more I can add to that, Dennis.
Yes. No, just that some people think, oh, is it? No, it's not. And then others are saying, yeah, it needs to. And so it's quite interesting just to get different people that I interview, their perspective on it and where they see things going around leadership and that whether it is changing or not. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree it is. Yeah. And I think so. If I was just to look at just even in the last 30 something years since I've been alive or cognizant of what's going on, there was more authoritarian leadership. So there was more somebody talking at you and you had to do this thing. And if you didn't do this thing, you were going to be shamed and you don't want that scenario or punished in some other way or some form. I believe which changing now, and I think it's for the better, is it's more genuine being with somebody saying, hey, we're going to align what it is that you want with what it is that I want. And it's going to be mutual based on these outcomes. It doesn't necessarily have to be entirely equitable, but it's going to be substantially closer than it was before. So I think there's more of, I dare use the word like shared vulnerability, but I think there's just more of a connection between the person that's leading and the person that is following than it was before.
There you go. Can you?
Didn't understand the question. Forgive me. I was educated in Florida.
Oh,
So-
what does that mean? There it is. Those in the US who are listening to this, they'll understand that. They'll probably go, oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's all good. Who's your favorite leader and why?
My favorite leader that I'm actually following him right now quite a bit. His name's Alex Hermosi. And I'm on a personal mission to meet this guy. And I know it's going to happen. I already imagine it. But Alex is somebody who I believe gets people results. Alex has been to higher levels than me in business. I think he makes $100 million a year in he owns acquisition.com. Free shout out to Alex. There we go.
There you go.
Doing goodwill. I admire what he knows based on where he's been. I think I admire who he's friends with. And I imagine that getting around people that are at high levels will expand what I'm able to do. And part of what I consider is my responsibility, both that's the thing. But anyway, Alex Hermosi is somebody I really look up to. He is influencing how I look at a broad array of situations and problems, etc.
So when you do get to meet him, and I know that will happen, what's one of the questions you want to ask him?
That's a good question. Firstly, I hope my gut is correct, because I have met people before and they're not who I not who I anticipate he is. I think I'm right. My gut's telling me he's a really badass dude. But one of the questions I'll ask is, what's it cost to be mentored? I already get a lot. He gives it all away for free. So I just want to be in proximity. I may not even ask a question. I want to hear what he says when he's talking to other people. I want to watch this. I did the same thing in sports. If someone was better than me in sports, I would observe, I would listen, I would watch, and then I would compete. Because in the event that I would do that, and I've never been like a jealous dude. If somebody was really good or somebody's hit high levels or has a nice car or whatever, better business acumen, I am more so inspired than fired up and angry or pissed off. A lot of guys struggle from that. I don't have an ego in that sense at all. I'm trying to get around people that are bigger than me.
Yeah, cool. And I think the actual question probably could be, how much is it going to cost me for not to be mentored by him? There's a really good way to look at it. I think, so for our listeners, Alex Hermosi is a great guy. He's built gyms. He's helped a lot of people build gyms. He's done a lot around online marketing and that. He's got a great book out there called $100 Million Offer.
Yeah,
And,
cool.
I know, because I read his book recently, but it's really awesome. And I would highly recommend that for you to look at that. It's really good. So thank you for sharing that, Tim. It's really good.
That's cool that you know him too. No, it's just been impressive. I'm literally watching this guy grow his social medias too. And I'm not trying, I'm growing my personal brand. I think everybody is to some extent. And I'm watching what he's doing in his systems and his processes and what his content looks like and how he's distributing his message. And it's cool. It's cool that you know him too.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too would be for people, I've given some people that book as a gift to them. And they say things to me and I go, read the book. Just read the book. And it's just like, for a lot of us, I don't know if you ever heard of a guy called Charlie Tremendous Jones. He's a kind of guy, he's passed away, but Charlie used to talk about everything was tremendous. How's that? It was tremendous. And they're like, he says, where you are today to where you need to be in the future to be successful comes down to the people you meet and the books you read. And we can listen to a book nowadays and things like that, but they're really important things for us to do. Tim, the show is called Leadership is Changing. When you hear that title of the show or that statement, what does that mean for you?
So it goes back to what I was saying, being an empathetic leader and actually giving a shit about my people's opinions and what's going on in their life, like not only at work, but who their family is, what's going on. It's within my best interest to actually give a shit. And I think that's new. No offense to anybody that's in a typical corporate environment. I worked in the military and there's some of this, maybe not as much. I've never worked in a professional, like civilian environment where there's like a Fortune 500 company and there's all this hierarchy and there's all these, I don't know how to play politics at all, but I know that there's definitely games that people like the like me games and things of that nature. And I think that's even changing. I think that you are in the future, as we continue to grow, you're going to be paid in direct proportion to your ability to solve problems. And I think like even further than what that is now. But I think also your performance is going to play a big part in your earnings as the future continues. And your ability to lead yourself and create skills that pay the bills and skills that are transferable to a company or product, service, etc. Yeah, like leading it. There are a couple of things. You individuals like that are employees are going to have to lead themselves even more so in the future. And then companies that are in charge of a lot of people are going to have to figure out ways to replicate their soul, their spirit, their care throughout their large organization. I don't run a huge organization, so my spirit's still nice and around my guys. But as we grow, and some people maybe listening to this have hundreds or thousands of employees. I think that's duplicating true leaders throughout your organization. That's a whole nother challenge question. How do you do that, right?
Yeah. And you do that through other people by first showing them how to do it and being it and living the words of what you're actually expecting others to do too. Because there's no point in trying to get others to do something if you're not willing to do it yourself.
Sure.
You can't do that. And people are going to see through that for sure. Who's your favorite leader and why?
I do not have one favorite leader, but I would name three. Marvin Bauer, the founder of McKinsey. McKinsey himself, he died 3 years after the company was founded in 1932. And Marvin Bauer is the person who created McKinsey, the culture, the spirit, etc. The second is Joseph Cardinal Höffner, who was one of the most influential figures in the Catholic Church, Cardinal in Cologne. And the third person is Mickey Lee. She is a granddaughter of the founder of Samsung, and she founded her own company, CJ Group, which now has a revenue of $26 billion. I met these three persons and they left a very strong impression on me. But I would also describe a group of leaders as role models. These are the leaders of the hidden champions. The hidden champions are mid-sized, unknown global market leaders. And I have written a couple of books about them. The newest one is coming out in May, Hidden Champions in the Chinese Century. And these leaders, often founders, they deeply impressed me. And they're characterized by certain traits which are somewhat unique. First, the unity of person and purpose, a total identification with what they do. Second, their ambition to be the best in their market. That's why they are world market leaders. Then focus, or you could call it single-mindedness. Only focus leads to world class. And fourth, the ability to inspire others. As a leader, you cannot do it alone. An artist, a painter, an author can become world famous on his or her own, not a leader or an entrepreneur. And this ability to inspire others, I take that back to St. Augustine of Hippo. He said, the fire which burns in you, you must ignite in others. So this is the world of the leaders who deeply impressed me. I also met many famous leaders. I met Bill Clinton. I met Mikhail Gorbachev and hundreds of leaders of large corporations. They impressed me much less than the people I just described.
Interesting, isn't it? So we've got world leaders and so forth, but those who really impressed you were the ones who are the hidden champions. And I love the different areas you talked about: unity of purpose, the ambition to be the best in their own market, and then what they do in their industry and so forth. Focus, which leads on to world class, and of course the ability to inspire others. That's brilliant. I think that's wonderful attributes or things for them to have. But you took that from that, which is really great. And yeah, I love that. I was going to say to you a question, which was, if you had a chance to meet them, what would be a question you ask them? But you've met them all, so I
Yeah,
can't really ask
yeah.
you the question. But that's all good. I think that's wonderful. Tell me something. What was the difference between those world class leaders versus those hidden champions? Was there anything that was different about everyone, or was there something that they all had in common, but there was a little bit difference because of stature and things like that? I don't know how to call it.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to describe. And if you ask me, why did they impress you so much? I
Hmm.
cannot articulate that. But I think the true difference is in the core. Many so-called leaders play a role. These leaders who impressed me, they did not play a role. They were what they did. They walked the talk. They were genuine. I think this core is the core of true leadership. So that's, for instance, expressed in the unity of person and purpose, the total identification with what they do. And that creates vis-a-vis the employees or vis-a-vis other people huge credibility. They don't talk much, but they convince through what they are. For instance, I had invited the Cardinal of Cologne, which I mentioned, a big conference which we did in the 80s on business and the church. And so he said he had 4 doctoral degrees, own doctoral degrees in theology, in philosophy, in law, and in economics. So he said, no, I don't do it. And it was totally clear for me that there was no discussion. But then he recommended a cardinal from the Vatican, who was also an expert who gave the speech at this conference. They say something, and it's solid. It's like a rock. Strange
Wow,
experiences.
fantastic. I was going to say to you before, I think a lot of it is that they're very influential people, but also they become the leader rather than playing the role of the leader, as you're saying.
Yeah,
No, that's
yeah.
good. Wonderful. Now tell me, the title of the show is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does that mean for you?
It's ambivalent. I would say both statements are right. Leadership is not changing, and leadership is changing. Leadership is not changing in the fundamentals which I learned in the 3 stages I described, and which I describe in a lot of detail in my autobiography, Many Worlds, One Life, a journey from farmhouse to global stage. These fundamentals do not change. Also, the aspect, the traits I describe with these exemplary leaders. But the concrete content and the tools of leadership change, of course. When we talk about the values of employees today, they are much more related to purpose, to social aspects, to environmental aspects than these values were 20, 30 years ago. And of course, as a leader, you have to respond to these changes. And you also have to use the tools. The internet, digitalization make things possible which haven't been possible. I introduced, for instance, that was in the late 90s, a weekly newsletter. Practically everybody does that today, where I was able to address all employees every Friday at 9 o'clock European time. So the people in Japan and in San Francisco could read it within normal office times. These are new tools which you can use. You can talk to people who are remote by virtual software, etc. So the fundamentals of leadership haven't changed since Caesar's time 2000 years ago. The concrete values and the tools are adjusting, and you have to go along with that as a leader.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love how you're saying it as well, because it is the values and it is the tools that are changing. And so what's really interesting here is that you're right. There's a lot of leaders who are being left behind. Why? Because if they're not changing quick enough along those tools and so forth that you're talking about, then they will get left behind and they become irrelevant. So
Yeah.
the important
Yeah.
thing is you just can't sit on the foundations today. The foundations is the foundations. What we do with those foundations and how we apply it is what's really important.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.